Well, Eric, we're only a couple of weeks away from the August primary. A lot of gun people talking about the Amendment 4 fight. A lot of people are saying it's a gun rights issue. Of course, you and I believe that's the case. Some people are saying it's not a gun rights issue, and others are saying that we should be a no vote because of the way the whole thing was written. This has been a big fight of yours even before you were in Congress also.
Yeah, this is a real gaping vulnerability that we have in Missouri. We've seen it been used again and again when the left can't get things done through the proper channels, through the normal legislative process. They throw things on the ballot with billions of dollars or millions of dollars, and they're able to get something put on the ballot with their ballot candy language and entice people to vote their way. And each and every time our rights get eroded. That's why it is a massive gaping vulnerability that needs to be fixed.
I think a lot of gun people who don't maybe follow politics very much assume that everything is always going to be fine here in Missouri because it's a red state. We have a massive supermajority in both chambers in Jeff City. But maybe what they don't know is what you just said, that this allows these Soros-backed entities, Bloomberg, whatever, to bypass Jeff City completely and put something like an AR-15 ban or universal background checks directly into our state constitution and never have to set foot in the Capitol at all. And most states don't have this level of vulnerability. Missouri is one of the most vulnerable. And so it's a target for the radical left to try to come into places like Missouri and do exactly this, circumvent the General Assembly and ram gun control in via referendum. How many states have problems like this? Do you know? I don't know off the top of my head.
Right. I don't even know if there's very many states that are like Missouri in this regard. I think we're probably one of the most open to the democratic process as possible. And again, I mean, a lot of leftists love to use the word democracy like it's the greatest thing ever. But the truth is, our founding fathers recognized that it's dangerous to have pure forms of democracy, that pure forms of democracy is really can be a form of tyranny. And so when you've got leftists that, Aaron, I don't even want to give them the idea. Like, even having this conversation is probably even giving them. They think they're probably taking notes on the ways in which they could do damage to our Second Amendment rights. But all it would take is a millionaire and some of their activists to put something on the ballot, make it sound great,
right?
And suddenly you and I and our Second Amendment rights are completely destroyed. And so it's way too easy. 51% should not be able to change the Constitution. Our founding fathers recognize that. That's why their process is that it takes 2/3 of the House and the Senate to pass something, just to even propose it, and then 3/4 of the states. So if that let's put that into perspective. If we were to do that in Missouri, that would mean just to put something on the ballot, you would need 2/3 of the legislature, and then you need 3/4 of the citizens to vote to put something on the ballot, or to actually pass something, put it in the Constitution. This approach that's been suggested is, in my opinion, way, way, way below that threshold. It's above 51%, which is great, but it's not as high as the threshold it is on the federal level.
Right. I want to mention that threshold for those who might not know. So right now, if something's put in the ballot, 50% of the vote plus one will allow them to enact that as though it passed the General Assembly. And so, well, that sounds like a big threshold. And in some ways, it kind of is. It's not really, when you consider that well over half of Missouri's population is contained in the dual metros of St. Louis and Kansas City. Then you toss in your Springfields and your Columbias and others. And very quickly, we have real problems. That's how we got Amendment 3 adopted in 2024. It didn't pass in the 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th, or 8th congressional districts, but it did pass in 1 and 5, for example. And that numerical superiority of these big Democrat strongholds was enough to carry the day. It would be the same thing with gun control if they have a chance to do that. So the new one, the threshold now in this Amendment 4 proposal would require a majority in not just the statewide vote, but in each of our 8 congressional seats. I have that correct?
That's right. That's exactly right. That you would have to have all of the 8 congressional districts would just have to get 51%, which is not a very high threshold.
Right.
But what that does do, and look, let's keep in mind, this is about the Constitution. This is about, which is designed to protect the rights of the minority. That's what a constitution is about, is to make sure that there are guardrails that elected officials and that democracy cannot go so far. That means things like making sure that no matter what and how tyrannical that our elected officials might be, they can't take away the freedom of the press, the freedom of your faith, your free speech, those kinds of guardrails. And so to me, to make it just simple to be able to take away very fundamental rights that should be enshrined is something that should be sacred. It should be much more difficult to do. And that's why it's designed to protect the rights of the minority.
Yep.
And that's why I think that making sure that, if Southwest Missouri had, values that were unique and there's like, for example, I'll give you a wild idea. Let's say if somebody wanted to put on the ballot, some environmental nut job wanted to put on the ballot that it should be illegal to drive a car through a cave. Well, if the rest of the state would look at that and say, yeah, sure, we don't want people driving through a cave. But in Southwest Missouri, we drive cars through caves, right? Yeah. And so it would violate just this particular area and the people that live in my district. And so as a result, we should be able to stand up and say, no, you're not going to violate our rights and what's important to us. Now, look, what we didn't mention is that we're leaving in place in Missouri. What's left in place is they want to change Missouri law and not the Constitution. That would be a simple 51% of the majority, and that remains in place. So, but at the end of the day, to put something into the Constitution, which should be considered sacred, much more important, of a higher standard, I think it's worthy of requiring a higher threshold.
I think it's also important to just we kind of forget. Some people like to say this is sensational. They're not actually trying to do this, but just 2 years ago, we had a big proposal for gun control to be on the ballot in 2024. It was on the news just 2 years ago, and they pulled it because the left ran polling, and they realized that they wanted to have any chance of passing Amendment 3, which was the abortion referendum, they could not also go after guns because gun voters are a very potent voting bloc here in Missouri, and they thought it would tank both things at the same time, and probably it would have. But the idea that
they're trying to divide and conquer, Aaron. That's what they're trying to do.
Exactly.
They realize they can divide and conquer with separate ballot issues.
Right. So anybody who thinks that this is sensational, they're not trying to do this, just is not aware of the times that we're in. Like, they very much want to come in here and repeal things like constitutional carry and ban AR-15s and everything else because they think they can get the votes for it in these big voting blocks of St. Louis and Kansas City and some of the rest of these areas. So I think they're definitely on their path to doing this. One of the objections we've heard a lot about, Eric, I want to ask you about this. I've got my thoughts, but I'm going to get your thoughts on it first, is just that this is bad language. And we have people in Missouri who are saying this is not good enough. We should all, in fact, vote against this and let the Huns come over the wall and destroy our gun rights as early as next year, because this language restricts the ability for outsiders like Bloomberg and Soros and his kid and all the rest of these leftist billionaires from coming to Missouri and running these end runs around the General Assembly. But it leaves intact the ability for the General Assembly to do their own initiative petitions to modify the Constitution. What are your thoughts on that? Is it bad language? Is it good enough? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first, this is not recognizing that there are different processes on the federal level as well. You've got on the federal level, it's easy for Congress to come together because they're meeting together all the time to just submit to the states. It's much easier for the states to use the latter part of Article 5. The states have to actually call a convention or like for amending the Constitution. So first and foremost, I want to recognize that the founding fathers established differing ways for the Constitution to be amended. One direction would be from members of Congress, and the other direction would be from the outside in. Secondly, look, when you elect people to represent you, this is not a democracy. This is a republic.
Yeah.
This is a constitutional republic. And so the great thing about that is, look, if you the hurdle that it takes to pick the right elected official that's going to represent your values and your views, and then put them in place, and then for them to be able to go through the very, very, very difficult process of passing a law or a bill to in order to get something put on the ballot, recognize that that is not an easy process. You know, you have to get it out of the House, you have to get it out of the Senate, which means you have to overcome a filibuster. That in and of itself, there's plenty of time for input. People can go and testify. The public can rally either for or against a topic. There is plenty of opportunities for input in that regards. I think that it's just hogwash for people to say that these processes should be identical, when at the end of the day, that's the whole purpose of having a republic.
Well, I think you took pretty much my answer, Hunter. I could not agree more. I keep hearing all this like online banter from people who basically they're always looking for better and better and better and better. We have a real enemy at the gate. I mean, the country is feeling these massive pressures from the left. Right now, we have peace, more or less, because we have a different president than we had a couple of years ago. But that's not going to last indefinitely. And we have a left right now who wants to destroy Missouri, not just gun rights, but all kinds of things. And yeah, I agree with you 100%. We're not a democracy. We elect lawmakers like you to go to Congress, or others to go to Jeff City, or county commissioners. And we temporarily give them a portion of our power. And if we don't like how it's used, we can then unelect them and kick them out of office and put somebody else in there. The power remains with us. We loan it out to legislators to go to DC or Jeff City to do things on our behalf. And so by definition, they have more power given to them by the people. And the idea that somehow it's wrong for them to have that power and exercise that power is preposterous. That's the reason why we have a republic in the first place. So right. I could not agree more.
And there's another point to be made, is that if you required unanimity or from the legislature, that would never happen. That's not
right.
ever going to happen. But you can get that, at least 51% from the voters of the congressional districts. That is something that is possible. And when you look back through some of these ballot initiatives, there's actually many of them that would have passed because they did get 51% of all the congressional districts. The other thing I wanted to point out is that you want a thoughtful legislature to address some of the very real world problems that have arisen because of the stupid language that is passed in past ballot initiatives. I mean, you've got real functional logistical nightmares that are occurring, and you need the legislative body to be able to appropriately make corrections as necessary in the Constitution in a thoughtful way, as opposed to the way in which the left has just basically shotgun effect thrown things up and thrown them into our Constitution, which is right now like a phone book. I mean, we literally have a Constitution that you can't put in your pocket like you can the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
The Missouri Constitution is thick. I would say 99.9% of the population has never read the Missouri Constitution from front to back because it is an absolute phone book because there's so much garbage in it.
Yeah, I mentioned this up before we began the interview, but yeah, the Missouri Constitution is 42,600 words. According to Ballotpedia, and the size of the United States Constitution is 4,543 words. So the U.S. Constitution is one-tenth the size of Missouri's Constitution, not even. So yeah, you're correct. And you mentioned, that's a good point. We have to have the ability to fix problems that have been caused previously in our Constitution, as we're doing, for example, right now with Amendment 3. So your views on abortion, they may be what they are as far as the audience is concerned, but it's an example of the fact that when the people get it wrong, from my perspective, and we authorize horrendous abortion laws here in Missouri, we need to have a process for the legislature to reflect the wishes of the people and go back in there and deal with that. Because again, that thing only cleared in a couple of congressional seats, and it was blocked in at least 5 congressional seats. So that's a very good point as well. What do you think is going to happen with this? We're getting pretty close to Election Day. I've seen some good numbers. What's your gut tell you right now?
I think that as we educate people, and I appreciate you doing this and doing this podcast. And I think that the more that people are educated, the more that reasonable minds will come to the conclusion that we need to pass this. So, and as we get closer and closer, people are starting to pay attention. So that's a good thing.
Yep. Well, guys, if you care about gun rights, care about your freedom today, tomorrow for your grandkids, get out there and vote yes on 4. Grab your friends, grab your family, grab your hunting buddies, your shooting buddies. The guy who doesn't vote very much, bring him out there, drag him behind your truck, metaphorically speaking, if you have to, and get them to the polls and vote yes on 4. If we don't deal with this, we will see massive gun control added to the Constitution here in Missouri in the very near future. Congressman, thanks a lot, and thanks especially for sponsoring the bills to abolish the ATF and repeal the National Firearms Act. That's always a big favorite of us to see your federal bills in D.C.
Thank you. It's always good to know when you see that you're fighting alongside the Missouri Firearms Coalition, you're doing the right thing.
Appreciate it.